Okay, I'll do like a third little one. This is really a nice spot here. I just came, actually it's like an off-ramp, and it has the same 40-mile-an-hour sign to come off here, off of the highway. All you have to do is look. There's no other case in Corpus where you had a car wreck. We're talking about Banales. Does he have connections with Celis? The charges, Mauricio Celis is a law firm operator, but some of the charges that he's facing are stereotypical, I guess you would say, of like Mexico drug dealing type thing. The charges are money laundering and other charges. And there was enough to understand that the local legal community believed that Banales was giving favoritism. He did a couple of moves. There was another judge that was looking at the case like you would just rule on a regular case. And he did certain type of maneuvers where the local lawyers and all legal community thought that he was like getting just kickbacks or whatever to protect somebody and to align himself with somebody that's facing charges. And Celis had a law firm. He says he's a lawyer out of Mexico. I don't know if they've ever confirmed that, but that he started setting up shop in Corpus Christi. So it wasn't just that it seemed as if the former district attorney, Carlos Valdez, actually felt, because it was the move that he tried to get Banales out, because they felt, and the particular thing he did, that the local legal community were afraid to speak on, was he didn't put him in jail. And Banales said, the jails are full. But he's never done it that way before. And the El Defensor guy said, oh, he's getting it. He's taking millions or whatever connected. But that was a serious question among lawyers. So, you have corruption. You would not want to be, if people are involved in crimes, it should be known, the public should know whether or not some of the reports were that they had handcuffs on Banales on a prostitution sting, and then this also, it's been reported. But then somebody else showed up, and whether it's he paid money or whatever it was, the other person immediately, like they hid the car in the wreck. There's no other that I could find. There's no other incident like the wreck. There's been many people that have crashed on these off-ramps in Corpus Christi and Nueces County. I could not find a single one where there was serious bodily injury to the person on like a pedestrian textile worker. There's not another one that I could find, even in Texas, where you just, where it was treated the way they treated the Banales. So everybody in the public knows there was either a cash payment, collusion, corruption. Okay, that's all you got to do is try and find one. I couldn't find one anywhere. You normally don't ticket. That was correct what they said. The normal speed limit on the highway, if it's 70, it is true they normally don't count it speeding if you're only going like 6 or 8 miles over. But that's, of course, if there's not. That's not on the off-ramp things. If you lose control and the mechanism, everybody knows. Now, the more serious question would be, I'm thinking that Mark Gonzalez, I would guess that he knows if all the other legal community, like the fire department and police department, if their rumors like, man, a certain judge is on the payroll or whatever, and the connection with the drug offense and drug laundering and his alignment and favoritism, which even other organizations showed, it shows me an arrogance that others in the community would be afraid to speak. If Miss Watson, miss him every year. If they don't know, I probably know more because of my friendships on the streets. The things that I had a friend of mine once tell me. I've had a few friends that have had committed murder. I told you that one case earlier. And of course on the street, I had a friend once come by. And he said, if people wanted to get me for various reasons, and you do have that does take place, that's not an uncommon thing in criminality. We're very close to Mexico, very close to where bloggers, as a matter of fact, a famous blogger was just killed in Mexico not too long ago. There's a lot of corruption within the courts in Mexico. And for our county to have that type of reputation, and now you have Banales again with an association of, they believe it's like an illegal association with somebody that has drug laundering charges, and somehow the lead investigator just recently said he'd plead the fifth. Do you have threats going on? Are there hits that go on? That's what I'll get to this, because yes, people do die and killings take place. For the most part, I believe Corpus Christi deals with them as any community. I had a few friends at the things that they used to tell me. And of course, I know their lifestyles, okay? Some of them have been killed, people I've worked with. But the other thing they used to say is there are indeed people that get killed that the community doesn't know about. That's something that they've told me as well. And I mentioned it the other day. Now, this would show the level of how far does corruption go. This would show the general public. I think some of the other people that are... I told some lady once, I said, there's a lot of corruption going on. And it was like the person said, oh my, I can't believe... So, they said that there are ways where, and I used to tell the guys, but people would report people missing if they, and one of them said, no, John, this was years back, they were at certain places and times where they saw these things occur, or they didn't give me particular names, but places where outside, like somewhere, ranch areas, and they disposed of bodies. But the troubling thing was, in order for that to be accomplished, meaning somebody would call and say, I can't find my son or my brother, and in a normal community, you would do that, and then you'd have a missing persons list. But what would happen if you actually called? Who do you call when that happens? You call the police. You call authorities. So the indication might have been something like, there's sometimes that they happen and they're permitted to happen. So, what would you say if you called? We have a local case of a bicyclist that was killed maybe now 8 months ago, and my kids went to school with him. The name was Fuqua, I believe Fuqua. Now, I'm not saying this is that, okay? I would not want to... The only thing that was disturbing in that Fuqua case, he was a bicyclist and like a very, a lot of people in that particular community knew about him. I think bicyclist or runner, one or the other, but he was coming back from run somewhere. On his way back to Corpus Christi, he was killed in a drive-by shooting, okay? And the parents, of course, rightfully, they went to the media. Now, I've not heard nothing on this for a while. So, the first thing I heard when it was reported, and my kids went to school with him in Florida Bluff, one of the Kevin Stowers, one of the Kirk Stowers, I think his father used to be my city manager in Kingsville, Kevin Stowers. So Kirk Stowers seems to be good. He's a cop and he does public things. So when they talked about it, they initially said they weren't sure. It happened in the evening, and They said maybe his vehicle got caught between, he was killed in his car. They said maybe his vehicle got caught between two other vehicles on a drive-by shooting type thing. And I thought that's very, that's not, you wouldn't have two people, one on one vehicle, one on the other, and they're both shooting back and forth and they accidentally, okay, that was just something that sounded strange that they would say that, okay? So then later, maybe Kirk Stowers also reported. I watched the news and I read the paper, so these could be mixed. But then they said tips were coming in. But at the same day or two, the parents, there was another report where the parents were upset because they called the detective in the case, and he had already told them it was a cold case. And I couldn't harmonize that one of the public statements from PD was, we have tips coming in, and the other public statement was, it's a cold case, and that upset the parents. Now, as far as I know now, it's never been solved, and I've not heard anything in the media. Now, I don't know if this is one of those, but if you have things which some of my friends that have been involved in crime for a long time, that kind of say some are sanctioned, or if you're paying people, if there's corruption, if there's money laundering, and it's actually reached the levels of judges and all these things. Yes, you have what's called corruption all around the country. The question is, what level do you have in our community? There was enough that came out just on the few little things we talked about. So I would say, yes, that's a question. That's a question. I would think that the new DA, my friend Austin told me that Mark Gonzalez, when he was the defense attorney, represented Austin in one of the cases. And he told me, John, he's a good defense attorney. To be fair, I would say he probably is, in this sense, that he got in the election when Skirka got unseated. And it was just a surprise that a Democrat that beat a Republican, that didn't have to go. It was right in the primary. He beat him outright. So there wasn't like later on another Republican that would run against him. There was another Republican that I thought was going to win. And Gonzalez won, and that's okay. I would think that within, like any community, police department, fire department, you have guys that you think, oh, they're not up to the job. And there's always hard ways to deal with those things. And I would think Gonzalez knows. If all the others in the article, one of the San Antonio articles, I believe was San Antonio, that's how they reported the thing with Banales. Like he was a power broker and people were afraid of him. And it was not, that came from a reputable paper, which would tell me that would scare citizens, that we kind of are getting that, judges being questioned about connections to drug laundering in their official capacity. We're so close to Mexico. You don't want to have that in the court system. And there was enough legitimate, not just yourself, Carlos Valdez, and then the others that were being interviewed in a reputable paper, not just a blog from Defensor, though Defensor has said the same thing. He's on the... And then, if it gets to the level of, you wouldn't want a community where one of my friends did say that the way some of these, he told me once, one of my friends said, John, he came to see me, and he said sometimes, because of our lifestyle, being on the streets, involved in things, he said sometimes we're asked to kill somebody. And he's looking at me. There's a few friends, they all know they have access to me. But if somebody that I don't know said, look, John's talking too much, it would be one of the people that everybody knows, hey, I let him in, I see him, I visit him. But when he talked to me that day, this was a few years ago, he said, and they sometimes, people in our lifestyle are asked. Now, these are people that talk about, they told me that some killings are going to purposely go as suicides later, because that meant that in some of them, if there was such deep corruption, they'd be reported in that manner. But as he was talking to me, he said, and he's just looking at me, and of course I felt fine with him. He said, but I don't think it's worth doing it because we've got to spend a lot of time in prison. And this particular friend, even people that are involved in criminal activity, some of them are independent. So if they're told by gangs or groups they're in, and this happens a lot, this happens in our jail system in Oasis County, hits are carried out, gang to gang. But he's the one that told me, he said, because I always question, how bad is it? Do they get away with? But he said, he gave me a particular famous case, and it was reported as a murder-suicide. And it was where I live. It was a few years ago. It was a man and a girl. I don't think I knew them because I looked at the names, but he gave me the names. And sure enough, the media did report that as a murder-suicide. Maybe it was, but my friend told me that those are the types that corruption says, okay, we're going to permit a certain thing. Now, hearing all those stories and then seeing even former DAs try to recuse a particular judge from a case because he thinks he might be taking money from somebody that's facing charges of money laundering. And now all these years later, a lead investigator in the DA's office 2 weeks ago did plead the fifth. But it might be because they got to him. It might be, and you say we don't believe that happens. Look, I gave you this case just thinking about it. It was Beeville. This was an actual case, and they reported it in the media. But there were 3 people that were being tried for, maybe it was gang related, but they went into a house and they killed multiple people. And I think one was a child, but they were witnesses. So that case, they were trying 3 people for like a multiple homicide, famous homicide case. The last week of the trial, they finally dropped charges. Why? Because there were 4 witnesses, regular people not involved in gangs. And all 4 of them, or 3 of the 4, were also murdered as the trial came up. So if you had 3 of the witnesses murdered by the same people, the gang that was being tried, and then they dropped the 4th final witness, and I think it was a lady. She said, forget it, I got to recant. But of course, you got to give protection, and that case was dropped. Well, but, and what do you think is going to happen to that 4th witness now living in Beeville? And all of the other witnesses that they murdered, this just happened in this last year. All the other witnesses that were murdered. Normally you have federal, Texas Rangers, normally you have people come in. That doesn't happen here. Okay, so that case was not solved. Of course, they're probably going to go kill that last person who's going to testify. That's very sad. That's not in the norm, okay? That's just not in the norm. So, we do have questions. We should know. I read a couple of things that the Judge Banales, they had cuffs on him in the prostitution. And then somebody else showed up, and then they took the cuffs off, and it was kind of... I would like to know whether or not that's true. If there was an arrest for some prostitution thing, if you give somebody a break, say he's got a drug problem, or but if it's because of corruption in the court system, and I think it's the ignorance of some others in that community that maybe are blind to that, that's problematic, okay? If you're going to honor a particular judge during the same week where a lead prosecutor going after one of his, like, a drug launderer person that he has been known to have connections to, and the lead prosecutor says, I'm out of this, and then that same week you do honors. Look, that just, it's just, it shows the public there's like a lot of ignorance in the community, in the legal community. So we'll end with this one. We do ask the question whether or not that's true, whether or not associations with drug laundering and all that, which the former DA brought up, that's corruption, okay? Corruption. Let's title it again, something like that.